Good morning, everybody. We are just waiting for a few minutes to have people join in, and we will begin shortly. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first challenge webinar of the Allied Defense Accelerator and International Space Pitch Day. We are truly excited to be kicking this off and to have everyone online this morning. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Brandon Florian. I am the program manager on the Starburst side for the Allied Defense Accelerator program. So I am the one responsible for working with United States Space Force, Air Force, and Royal Air Force, as well as the UK MOD and all the other stakeholders in delivering this accelerator program and International Space Pitch Day in November. I know most people are probably familiar with Zoom now after using it for the past 4 months due to current events. But just to quickly recap some functionalities that we'll be using for this event today. First off, everyone who is an attendee, unfortunately your mics are muted and your video is non-functional, so you will not be able to turn your mic on or turn your video on for that matter. But for the Q&A portion at the end, you will be able to use the Q&A function within Zoom. So if you were to hover towards the bottom of your screen, you would see a little button called Q&A. That will allow you to pose questions for our challenge stakeholders. And we will do our best to answer all questions at the end. We're probably going to leave about 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A after our challenge stakeholders present. And maybe even a little bit more time depending on how the discussion goes. But please try to save your questions towards the end, and we will do our best to answer them all. This video is being recorded, so everyone will be able to go back and see this video. We will post it up on the International Space Pitch Day website. Again, we will share that information with you, but you will be able to go back and view this video and all other webinar videos that we post up there, which we'll be having over the next 2 weeks. Other than that, I think that is pretty much it. It's very self-explanatory. With that, I would like to ask Captain Jake Singleton to turn on his camera and say a few words before we hand it over to Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt.
Thank you, Brandon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Welcome, everybody. We are very excited to be kicking off this program and introducing to you today our first challenge area. One thing that I want to emphasize in the approach that we're taking with these webinars is the importance of focusing on the end users, your customers, the people that are closest to the problems. We are making an attempt to position ourselves as defense and security acquisitions professionals to act more like an investor, where we don't care what your technology is, and we don't care if it works, if it doesn't really solve a problem. So today, we've got stakeholders and customers, people that are close to those problems, represented across multiple organizations within the US Air Force, Space Force, the Royal Air Force, Ministry of Defense. We're going to have people over the next couple of weeks across both countries here talking about these problems, introducing them to you. We hope that companies tuning in and learning from them about these challenges will see kind of the relevance to what they're developing and building. And if you have a technology or service that you think can solve some of these problems, please ask your questions, please get involved, and submit a proposal through the DASA program. We just had an introduction webinar. If you missed it, you can see it online, the website. It talks about the DASA process and what you need to be aware of to submit proposals and participate in the program, to have an opportunity to be invited to pitch day and pitch for contracts on behalf of the Air Force, Space Force, and the UK Ministry of Defense. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn the time over to Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt to introduce the problem and to moderate the other stakeholders that we have on the phone today. So welcome everybody, we're excited.
Well, good afternoon for those joining us from the UK and good morning for those from the other side of the Atlantic. I have the honour of introducing this first challenge today, which I'm very excited about. I'm Flight Lieutenant Mark Platt. I work at the Royal Air Force Air Command in air capability, in particularly space capability development. I've only been there for about 9 months now, so still a fairly new area to me. But it's a growth industry and it's a very exciting place to be. It's a very exciting time to be in this area as space capabilities really come to the fore. So what I'll do is I'll introduce the challenge. I'll then introduce the other members that are on this panel. And then we'll go around and we'll just have the introductory comments from each of us as we begin. So the challenge today, the challenge one is the visualization of key events and information, including system status of health monitoring in near real time for combined space operations with allies and commercial partners. So the crux of this challenge is all about how we understand, how we display information from the space domain in order to articulate what's happening to our decision makers and senior authorities, higher authorities and so forth. And that's really at the core of understanding the space domain. So what I'll do now is I'll introduce the rest of the panel, and then we'll go around and get some introduction perspectives. So joining me today, we have Lieutenant Colonel Dave Piatt from the National Space Defense Center. So if you just want to
turn on your cameras when you're introduced, that would be great.
Good morning. So just for full disclosure, I have two roles. One of them is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Piatt from the National Space Defense Center. The other one is contractor Dave Piatt from Dragon Ops, and today I am in the latter role, just for full disclosure on that. Good morning and good afternoon.
Good to have you with us, thank you. We also have Mr. Tony DeCarbo from the Combined Space Operations Center. He's the technical advisor to the Combined Space Force Component Command, part of US Space Command under command of Major General John Shaw.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm definitely excited to be part of this. Thank you, Mark, for the kind introduction, and let's keep going.
Welcome, thank you. We should also have with us Richard Ragsboller from United States Space Force, who's the Senior Technical Advisor to Director Strategic Requirements, Architectures and Analysis at the Headquarters US Space Force and manages the Science and Technology Program. If he's with us. Okay, looks like there might be a few issues there. We'll come back to Rags if he's able to join us. In that case, I'll go straight on to my fellow Brits. So Flight Lieutenant Ryan Holden, who is Officer Commanding Mission and Tactics Flight at RAF Findales, who's also a qualified crew commander and operator on the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System.
So hello everyone, thank you Mark for the introduction. Yes, so I'm a crew commander at RAF Findales, also responsible for developing tactics and procedures that the crews use in their day-to-day actions. So this is really interesting to see how we can benefit the missile warning system that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. So I'll kick things off then with offering the perspective from Air Command with a view to how this challenge is important to us and what it is that we're looking for really in the solution. So as I said in the introduction, this is all about enabling critical decision making And the best ways of achieving that is by providing clear visual indications of what's happening. And being able to explain to a senior decision maker exactly what's happening in the space domain, how we got to that point, and understanding what that might indicate, what that means, is key to obtaining the classification and the characterization of the battle space. So understanding why something is happening, why do we see various objects moving around, what is the behavior, how do they relate to each other? And it's that understanding, it's that visualization which is going to enable someone to make a decision which is going to be important for us as to whether or not we take certain actions, whether that's be from a military perspective or from a commercial perspective with our partners as to whether they want to maneuver or what have you. So for the most part, we're probably talking about space events like conjunction warnings. So the analysis which is needed to alert operators and users within the coalition environment that there's a potential for conjunction between two space objects, what that might mean further down the line in terms of debris and debris generation and so on, and what mitigation might be required in order to either reduce or to eliminate that danger. Currently, a lot of that understanding is quite limited in comparison to other domains. So if you take an analogy with the air domain, by contrast, where we have a fairly good, thorough understanding, which is provided with live data, providing that up to the minute understanding, the space domain, on the other hand, tends to be featured in with predicted data, which is occasionally updated rather than observed and recorded measurements. And this makes it difficult sometimes to articulate to decision makers exactly what's going on and what we think might be the reasons behind it, whether it's an entirely innocent operation or whether it's perhaps something more nefarious, which gives us cause for concern on other things that we might want to do. So that's where the UK perspective comes from. Some of the work that we're doing at the moment is to enhance our National Space Operations Centre, which should be able to take in various feeds of data from various sources, collate that into something more meaningful, and then present that to those decision makers. So this is key to what we're doing currently at RAF High Wycombe, where our Space Operations Centre is. And that is probably enough for me for now. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Colonel Pyatt, if you wouldn't mind, and just give us the National Space Defence Centre, or Dragon Ops if you prefer for today, your perspective.
Yeah, good morning. It's just Dave for today, please. But thanks, Lieutenant. So one of the things we do here at Dragon Ops is we actually leverage the commercial operations enterprise, and we actually are addressing or attempting to address some of the items that you're talking about. Starts off with primarily with some sort of a tipping and queuing, and we have tools that we've developed here throughout Dragon Ops through various companies. The first one would be one we call the Alert Management Tool. It's by a company called named DFNN, and that gives us tipping and queuing for either conjunctions or abnormal patterns of life maneuvering. The next thing we have an event management board, or something we call a mission management tool set, which basically takes in events and begins the process of crew coordination and to develop everything from, and the purpose of this discussion, right, is visualizations and fusion of that particular scenario. But when on the event management board, we'll begin to collate and gather and collate products from across the crew, and also task out to sensors throughout the space enterprise. In this particular scenario that you're referring to, we have a couple, and I'm assuming, Lieutenant, that you're asking, sorry, is it Flight Lieutenant, or it's Flight Lieutenant? Is that okay? So in this particular scenario, Flight Lieutenant, what I think you're asking about, in particular, visualizations. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. How do you visualize the
So,
events that are ongoing so that you can articulate the point you're trying to make to your decision makers? Yeah.
so in that first tool that I talked about from BFNNN, they have several products that they put forth, and that those get put into it. Full disclosure, once again, I work for a company called Centauri Corp, and our visualization tool is called SITSEs. It's also the one that it's an unclassed version of what is used in the center at NSTC. We also work with a company called Sabre Astro, and they actually have visualization and fusion picture with a product called Piggy or Space Cockpit. And then we also get various visualization and data fusion products from all the various vendors. For example, Leo Labs. We had back in January. I can actually show some of those products if anybody wants to see them. But back in January, there was a very, very close conjunction between two defunct spacecraft that couldn't move. It was a pretty high probability conjunction. But all these different companies and all these different visualization sources came together, and we put together, and that's one of the things that we do in DragonOps is we try to bring that together and then distribute and publish those products out as basically what we're calling a NATO or notice of space operators, very similar to what by trade I'm an aviator in the Army, and so very similar to what most aviators would call a NOTAM or a notice to airmen. So we would push that out as a NOTAM. The long-term vision for this would also be to get a hold if they're operational payloads, or if one or both are operational payloads, connecting those operators together and providing them that package of visualizations and data fusion together. How's that?
No, that was great. Thank you. That's really interesting actually, and touched on a point there about the commercial aspect as well, about the different partners and users, that this isn't a uniquely military problem by any stretch. And that's part of what we're looking to do from the UK perspective, is to include civilian and commercial operators within our operations center, so you get that unified approach. So it's really interesting to hear that from you as well. Thank you.
So, yeah, real quick, I don't know if you all are participating in a SAC-T events, or we have an item. I don't know if you've heard about the SAC-T events, but we also do in DragonOps. We do events in between what we call agile sprints called Ops Days, where we practice that commercial integration, and the commercial integration also pushes up to certain items up to the National Space Defense Center for just situational awareness. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
So if we can turn now to Tony from Combined Space Operations Center, and want to give us your perspective, please.
Good morning again, and thank you, Mark. Dave, thanks for that very, very in-depth conversation. It was it's something I'm very familiar with. As you know, the CSPOC works very tightly with the NSTC, so we're familiar with some of the tools that you mentioned. So I won't go there, but what I want to talk about sort of goes back a little bit to what Flight Lieutenant was talking about in the types of data. I mean, we talked about adding commercials. These visualizations, in order to enable our decision makers, these visualizations need to not only be able to show the blue order of battle, but also red and gray, commercial orders of battle. All those capabilities together shows that picture to the commander. Now, when we're talking about that many different types of data, we have to talk about what type of standards we have. And I think that is the real key to all the visualizations, to be able to make them tailorable to our various levels, whether it's the combatant commander, General Raymond in this case, or I'm sorry, Lieutenant General Dickinson. In this case, if he had his confirmation hearing yesterday, he should be confirmed to a full 4-star general. Down to someone in the field to be able to see what type of space capabilities they need to support their operations. And this is a different perspective, I think, than what Dave was talking about. The NSTC, if everyone doesn't know, has the mission of protecting and defending our space capabilities. where the CIFSIC and the CSPOC's mission is really to provide capabilities to the warfighter. So there's two sides of the same coin. So my perspective is being able to establish those data standards for visualization so that we can enable our decision makers at all levels to be able to make the decision to pass out orders, to develop orders, and to execute combined missions. Now I say combined missions. When I say combined, I'm talking about our allies as well. We have to be able to share the information and the visualization in near real time with our allied SPOCs. The Flight Lieutenant talked about their national SPOC. As you know, the UK is part of something called the Operation Olympic Defender, OOD. We have a lot of other nations that are coming on board. And I think Australia just announced that they were coming on board OOD, as well as Canada. Those two countries as well have space operation centers that we need to be able to share this visualization with. So again, my perspective here, I think is a little bit different than Dave. Dave was really into the actual tools that we use right now. I'm looking at it from a different perspective of providing the audience what we kind of need for this visualization. So it's the data standards that enable a visualization at multiple levels. I'm talking command levels this time, because I think we have another challenge later on, maybe next week, talking about multi-level security. Now that's a whole other issue, but the visualization has to include, like I said, the red order of battle, the blue order of battle, the gray order of battle, which is a commercial, to enable our combined operations to all of our SPOCs, not only the two operation centers of United States Space Command, NSDC and CSPOC, but also our partner SPOCs, our allies. I open any questions after that. Thank you.
No, that's great, Tony. Thank you. I think we'll do questions at a block at the end once everyone's had a chance to give their initial thinking. So, right, I noticed you've joined us now. So I wonder if you'll be able to join on and give the US Space Force perspective on Challenge 1.
Richard, are you able to speak?
There we go. Yes, I'm experiencing quite a few dropouts this morning, so you'll excuse me. But thank you very much for having,
I think your connection is suffering a little bit.
I think we also have Lieutenant Colonel Naday, Lieutenant Colonel Naday from Space Force as well. I wonder if you've got a better connection, sir.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Rags is my technical SME on this, and he is out in the middle of nowhere, so his internet connection is not that great. So he's hoping to get those commercial space satellites hooked up to his ranch so that he can have super fast internet and talk. So Lieutenant Colonel Tom Naday, I work in the headquarters Space Force, soon to be the headquarters Space Operations Command. I work in the 5-9 Directorate of Strategic Requirements, Architectures, and Analysis. I work for the technical director, and I lead an advanced concepts team that is looking at the broad scope of all of our technologies for all of our missions, trying to expand our aperture to include commercial, international efforts, all sorts of sharing. For this particular challenge, visualization and making decisions quickly is something that if Rags was able to talk, he would be talking about the need to very quickly be able to understand what is going on in space. Just emphasizing, we're not going to be sure what's happening sometimes. If the data may be uncertain, we're going to need artificial intelligence to help us analyze that and present that very, very quickly, present those courses of action to decision makers, to the commander, to General Raymond, or now the U.S. Space Comm 4-star. What do you do in seconds? So it's an extremely challenging problem, and we need to be able to bring in multiple sources of information in all sorts of novel ways. One thing I will advertise is formerly Air Force Space Command, now the Space Force, the Chief Scientist's Office published a long-term challenges memorandum that is, I believe, publicly available. And that contains some of this, some of the root technologies that will help us with these challenges.
Thank you, Carl. And that point that you brought up, I think it was your penultimate point about the timeliness of decision making. That's really interesting. That's something that we're looking at as well in how we can take on the information, disseminate it within a timely fashion, as opposed to taking several hours or days to compute data. So thank you very much for that. That's really useful. And last, but certainly not least, Ryan from RAF Allendales. I wonder if you could give us a tactical commander's perspective.
Yes, so thank you, Mark. So the things that have already been spoken about already really resonate with what we experience at Fylingdales. So Tony mentioned earlier the decision makers at all levels. So as a tactical commander of a space radar, we like to make the decisions as fast as possible. Currently, we are tasked from our higher authorities, both 18 Space and the UK Spot. And through that, we task the radar to look for certain things. Now, given that decision-making quality, if we're able to do that in a timely fashion, as has already been said, we're able to use the radar much more effectively. It's a fantastic tool that we have at our disposal. So the ability to task it faster and sooner would mean that we can gain more observations and build more of a pattern as to what's going on. So, for example, if we take the proximity of Thule's radar to Fylingdales, currently there's a delay there with a middleman, as it has to go back to the 18 Space for them to decide to task us. If we can get that data quickly and readily available, we could catch something in that same pass rather than waiting that length of time for it to come around and us to view it again. That allows us to make much more observations. And as we plow in with that data, we can build the pattern of life more and more as we go. And if we notice something that's out of sync, that can be built in. AI has already been mentioned. With our data, if somebody can see something in that really quickly, not waiting on that human interaction to jump into it, it could be a fascinating prospect as where that could take us. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, thank you. That's really useful. Thank you. So now everyone's had a chance to give their initial pitch, if you like. I was wondering if I could just open up some questions. And what I'll do is I'll just ask somebody on the panel to have a stab at an initial answer. But of course, if anybody else on the panel would like to jump in as well and offer their answer, that'd be really useful. So I think the first one, I just want to come to you, Tony, if I can. And it was just touching on something you were talking about within the grey users as well as the red and blue. I was wondering how you're currently solving that particular problem. What it is you're doing to achieve that and disseminate that information.
Thank you, Mark. So at the CSPOC, there's a couple of things that are going on to solve that. I think Dave mentioned the SAC-T. So the CSPOC and the CIFSIC are participating really recently in the SAC-T events as well. So that's one thing, and I know that the last SAC-T that was held, the concept of a debt in the cloud, the detachment in the cloud, sort of came about because of the COVID environment. So a lot of the commercial companies participated in an unclassified environment, which was really successful. So we're looking at those types of connections. But at the CSPOC, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the commercial integration cells. So commercial integration cells, right now we have a relationship with 8 different companies, and this is primarily in the satellite communications area, where we actually have a representative of the CIC that sits on our operations floor and then communicates relevant information to the other companies, and we actually pass information back and forth. So we are integrating in a commercial sense the gray areas in through our commercial integration cell. We're looking now, CIFSIC is looking now to actually expand it. And I think actually, I think the UK is standing up one or has already stood up a CIC type of concept, but So you can see the value. I mean, our allies are looking at the value of really integrating with commercial, because honestly, we've seen the discussions about space being contested and congested and everything. And if and when we get into a conflict in space, I don't see how we're going to be able to maintain the command and control and communications at a minimum without relying on some of our commercial partners. So we recognize the value. The CIFSIC and US Space Command is going forward with additional CICs. We're figuring out actually how to do that. But right now, to answer your long answer to your question is through the CICs is we're integrating with some of the commercial partners that we have, and trying to solve long-term that issue of integrating the gray order of battle. So what we're looking for as a visualization is to actually have have those capabilities that the commercial companies are providing as part of that overall visualization. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that was useful. Thank you. Yeah, and just touching on the point there, you're absolutely right that the UK SPOC commercial integration cell was announced last week. So yeah, that is something which we are actually pursuing and are fully behind and have bought into. I don't know if anyone else, perhaps in US Space Force, if Colonel Naday, you had anything else to chip on that? Colonel Naday. Oh.
Hey, I do have a question for you, and it's more of an admin question. I'm sorry, not familiar with the format, haven't done this before, but as far as like the Q&A, those Q&As that pop up, are they specifically for like whatever's on my screen for me, or is that for the group as well?
It's going to be for the group during the Q&A portion. So once the challenge discussion is done, then we can open up the floor to Q&A, and I'll be.
I just want to make sure that I wasn't being rude and not. Sorry.
Yes, no problem.
That's quite all right. I'll come to the panelists with these questions, but I'll let the Starburst host run the Q&A section if that's all right. So I've lost my train of thought now. So I think what I'll do is I did have a question for Ryan Holden at Fallendales. And this one is about what would you do to change the products that you're working with now? What would you like to see ideally in the future if you could?
Yeah, so thanks, Mark. Yeah, so I think for us, the main thing would be to not underestimate the people that we have working around us. So we might receive a product to a certain thing which is giving us a very specific avenue to look at, where I've already mentioned tasking of a satellite. We might receive a tasking to basically look at this satellite at this time, add in the background to us, give us that visualization as it's already been mentioned, give us an idea as to what he may be doing. Our engineers are fantastic and the crews that we have on are fantastic. So if we've got that ability to read into the situation and understand the situation more, it will give much more of a context to the operator and allow them a better feeling as to how to deal with that situation. I hope that helps.
No, that was useful. Thank you. And then I did actually just want to go back to Colonel Naday at the Space Force, because there's another question here. It's about the cost of not solving this problem, or the impact of not solving this problem, which is probably going to be quite a difficult ask, because how do you quantify it? But even if you ask how might you quantify it, that might be useful in itself.
That's a tough question. I apologize earlier, I got cut out and I was looking at the Q&A questions. The cost of not solving this is it could be catastrophic if we don't have the ability to quickly digest and appreciate the information that's going on. I'll just return to what I said before is what's going on in space is not simple. We have all sorts of events that could be attributed to natural events, could be attributed to various commercial things going on, partner nations, could be non-partner nations, or it could be adversary type actions. And it's not going to be very obvious what's going on without, in my opinion, some, particularly some AI. There was a question in the Q&A, which was what I was looking at, was, is AI absolutely necessary? And it maybe it isn't particularly necessary literally, but to achieve the speed, the timelines of what we call the OODA loop, or observe, orient, decide, act. If we are frozen because we are unable to observe and orient, which is kind of what this challenge is about, is orienting really, and, then we're just going to be stuck, and we're going to put ourselves and our coalition, our allies, at the risk of mission failure without that quick ability to digest that information. I'll stop there.
That's great, Cal. Thank you very much for that. So unless there are any other particular points which any of the panelists wanted to make at this stage regarding this challenge, what I think I'll do is I'll invite Brandon, if you're there. Are you likely to coordinate the open Q&A for us?
Hey, Flight Lieutenant, I have something to add to what the Colonel was saying earlier. So I think the most basic question that we want to answer with a lot of these visualizations is, so what? And it's really, so does the product stand on its own? Does it tell you everything you need to know by looking at the product? One of the things that I've noticed most often is that whoever's putting the products together, it means something to them, but for someone that is just looking at it initially, it doesn't always necessarily answer that "so what" on its face. And so I think that's one of the critical items that needs to be considered when these things are come together, and it is, like, number one, standing alone, and number two, answering, really getting to the "so what" of why do I care.
Hey, Flight Lieutenant, if I could add on to what Rag's saying, I know we're really going over the same point over and over again, but what Dave's talking about is really critical, because at any given time, I know at CIFSIC, we're being approached by what's being termed another spinning globe. And that's not what we need. We don't need visualization for visualization's sake. It's what Dave was just talking about. It's to enable decision makers. So that's why the data behind any visualization is key. And that's going to flow right into what the Colonel was saying about artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's got to be key to this, because when we started integrating all those different orders of battle that I was talking about earlier, there's going to be so much data that we need to have the computers do a lot of the work for us. I'm not saying take over. I'm not talking about, Terminator or anything like that, but we really need to have some AI and ML included in this, because that's going to factor into how we do that multi-level security. I talked about that earlier, and I know that's another challenge, but that machine learning and artificial intelligence is going to be key to a lot of that. So I just wanted to I guess, finally foot stomp what Dave and the Colonel were saying. Over.
Great. So with that, we will start the Q&A section of this webinar. We have a few questions that came through, so I will do my best to address them. Let's see. First one is, and I think someone already kind of talked to that, but basically using is AI required to characterize the spacecraft / projectile? If anyone else wants to kind of touch on that real quick and give their thoughts.
So from a Dragon Ops perspective, I think that the AI is important, but there's also a certain amount of operational art that we cannot overlook. And a lot of that operational art comes from a human. But I would to foot stomp Tony's point. I think there's somewhere in the middle there's a happy medium to AI, but also combining that with the human element as well.
Right. Okay, let's see. Next question. The descriptions provided by the panel today seem to cross across many of the challenges. How would you recommend focusing a response for challenge 1 specifically?
So I'll take a stab at this one. So for challenge 1 specifically, honestly, I don't know how we can really separate them from other ones, but for specifically for the challenge that we're talking about, goes back to my original opening statement about the combination, combining the orders of battle into a visualization that the decision makers can use to make a decision. Now, what does that really mean? So what do they need to understand? They need to understand the availability of what's there. They need to understand what sequentially in time, excuse me, in time, what capabilities are there. Because before, and this is really for day-to-day ops, and it flows into any type of conflict either. But when it gets to day-to-day ops, we need to understand what capabilities we can have and what we can trade off a situation warrants. I mean, if we're accidentally, or if we're not supporting either a command in the field or ships at sea or what have you, we need to be able to see what resources we would need to be able to maneuver to support their position navigation timing, their satellite communications, et cetera. So I think that hopefully that gets to the specifics of this particular question. We're looking at specifically those capabilities and to be visualized to enable day-to-day operations, as far as trading off capabilities, as far as moving capabilities, and assigning operations and command and control in those operations. I hope that helped.
Great. That does provide a little bit more insight. So hopefully it's helpful for the person who asked the question. Let's see. Next question. So kind of going back to the whole AI thing. This particular challenge is focused on visualization. So they'd like to hear on how the team is separating visualization from conducting the analysis. I guess there's a little bit of confusion as far as mixing what's being asked for. Is it AI or is it visualization? Tony, you're muted if you said something.
Oh, sorry. Just want to make sure nobody hears the lawnmowers in the background. This challenge is specifically about visualization. I think a lot of the conversation we've had today about AI, machine learning, is really probably part of the solution space. So maybe it's a good question, because we probably should stay away from defining a solution space and just describing, I'm going to use the word requirement. I know that's kind of dangerous, but using the need that we have. So the need for this challenge is the visualization to show what we've been talking about. And I'll turn over to any of the other panel members. I don't want to dominate the conversation.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Naide. I brought up the AI, and I agree with Tony that it's often seen, just throw some AI at it. We're not intending to define the solution space, but the challenge does say to visualize and understand. So going back on what Tony said before, a visualization that is a massive ball of fluff spinning around the earth or another globe is not going to allow the decision makers to understand what's going on. The visualization may need some meat behind it that helps filter out, what is important for the commander, for the human to look at. So whether that's literally done with what might be defined as AI, or it's just sophisticated processing or algorithms, is up to the solution provider. But the goal is to provide the decision makers an understanding of what is going on in a very complicated decision space.
I'd like to just jump onto the back of that, if I may, Colonel, because that's really important from a UK perspective as well, especially that when you consider the expertise and the experience for space operations within the UK, even within the Air Force, is fairly limited. So you may have a senior decision maker who doesn't have a particularly wide-ranging space operational background, and so they're not going to be able to see and understand some of the more complicated aspects of the space domain and know what's going on. So any visualization tool, any answer, any information that you're putting through has to cut through that complexity and the mathematics and the physics behind it, and just get to these so whats. I think it was mentioned earlier on. So it's got to be able to simplify quite succinctly what's going on, what the problem is.
Flight Lieutenant, I think that's the crux. I mean, I think that gets to the AI portion of it. So that's where I would see that's where I would see artificial intelligence being able to fuse all those products together and actually get down to that. And to someone that has not spent a lot of time in the space community and doesn't know when you look at lines on the plot with different orbital elements, what that actually means. So, yeah, I would agree with you.
And to add on that, there was more of a comment than a question that came through, but it's from Group Captain Whiteley. Hopefully I said the last name correct, but it says, building on what Tony DeCarbo said, we provide space support to the theater warfighters. Ideally, any visualization tool would also need to be able to show real-time red, blue, gray orbats for land, air, and maritime forces to assist the commander understand the totality of the context. It also needs to be shareable / available to those commanders, allies, and partners we work with. This will drive the need for it to be filtered to various classification levels. Okay, let's see. Next question. Are you only concerned with objects on orbit or also objects that do not achieve orbit, such as some anti-satellite weapons? And this question is pretty up to date with current affairs with Russia testing their on-orbit capabilities.
Well, I know Dave of NSGC is going to have a lot to say on this one, so let me just my little bit. This goes back to the Red Order battle. The tight connection we have between the CSPOC and NSDC makes this a yes answer, bottom line. Because when these type of things happen, we trade information, trade analysis back and forth, and that has to be quicker and better. So we get that. Somebody mentioned OODA loop earlier. So we get that speed of war, whatever the correct term is now, as fast and accurate as possible. And I'll turn that over to Dave for anything else. Over.
I would just the short answer to that question is anything that affects the space JOA is of concern, right? So I mean, so I think I would agree with everything that Tony just said. So I mean, that's kind of a loaded question, right?
All right. Next question. Can the panel describe why, quote unquote, visualization is a major challenge area, specifically address what is currently deficient or not meeting the needs of operators?
I can take a stab at this one, I guess. Once again, I mean, when you're dealing with a multi-dimensional space and you're trying to depict it on a two-dimensional screen, I mean, if you know the orbital elements, you can show that in a graph, right? And then if you can kind of visualize what you're looking at there. But like back to the discussion of the AI, when you if you have a bunch of graphs and you don't know what those mean, and they'll do a lot of good for the decision makers. So really, kind of, the best actual visual depiction on a 2D screen that I've seen is more of a video where you can kind of rotate the item around and you can kind of get an idea. But that isn't always practical when it comes to being able to share that, because that becomes a data hog. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, hopefully that answers the question. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
No worries. specifically, I mean, if you think about the current, the past, current, and future types of warfare, think back to December 6th, 1941, right? I know, I'm an old guy, so I go back to what I know. If we had information from Australia, for example, or Japan, or not, well, not Japan, China, for example, in that case, that we were, the indications and warning were that we were going to be attacked. Now, that's key. So indications and warning, and we talked about ASATs. If we get into a conflict, having indications and warning, that's a key thing that I don't think is visualized across the spectrum. So I think that is the real key, is getting these types of information, the red order battle, blue order battle, gray, indications and warning, the intelligence, all of those pieces specifically to visualize for the different levels of command. We talked about Fylingdales, we talked about General Dickinson making decisions. That specifically is what's missing. We have some great pockets. I know UK has some great information that they can visualize for themselves. I know France does. I know other countries do. I know the NSDC does. I know CSPOC does. But to pull it all together, to pull that information together for the indications and warning, to be able to perform command and control for operations, that is the essence, I think, of what's missing. And I'm definitely open to any comments, because that's just from my seat here. Over.
I think I can add to that one for you there, Tony. As the tactical commander of Fylingdales, I think it's that being able to see through the fog of war, to take what is there and that user-defined picture. So the picture that you may want to see is different to the picture that I want to see. We need to be able to see what each of the users need to see. So that allows us to visualize, and the visualization that we're thinking of here is the predictive, not the analysis afterwards. We've already spoke about the analysis. That's all well and good after the fact, but if you need to move your satellite out of the way of a potential ASAT, it's too late after you've done the analysis. So it's that visualization for somebody to see it quickly and say, okay, this might happen. And it's that might be the thing that saves your satellite from being destroyed. So, and that common data source that you can throw into that. So if you push that all together, it gives that picture so everyone can take their piece of the pie and get what they need out of the system without it overloading everyone else. Anyone else?
Yeah, Flight Lieutenant, I mean, I can't agree more, because I know we have another challenge about training. And I know we had a question earlier about, well, what do you need specifically for this? These challenges seem to cross over a lot. Well, it is, because it's very integrated. But what you're talking about, and again, the machine learning AI piece and that predictive, the most likely course of action, the most dangerous course of action, all those things are what we need to be able to visualize. And that is really the essence of what I think we're trying to get after. So that was a great point, Ryan. Thanks.
So this is Regs. I hope you can hear me. I know you can't probably see me, because every time I try the video, it knocks me off the screen, or it knocks me out of the conference. But I think we have the data. I mean, if you are an operator and you sit in front of a screen, you can see large arrays of data streaming across the screen and everything like that. And if you've been there, sitting there long enough, you begin to understand what that means. But as several people have said during this panel, we have decision makers who come in who don't have the ability to have all that time on console to understand what that means. And so the criticality is to present that information to them in a way such that they can make the decision. And maybe
Oh, we lost you, Richard. He did that for suspense. I know he did. Leave you guys wondering.
I'm back.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, so let me just finish my thought. Take the data that is coming in, present that to them, and then show them what the outcome could be. That is possibly the most important thing we can do in this area. Over.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Last question. can you provide other examples of information that will need to be displayed? We have heard about potential trajectory and impact scenarios plus object identification needs.
So sensor plans. When, like, for an example, I think we started out, this was a conjunction type scenario, right? So you want to, you obviously want, what your sensor plan looks like before and after whatever is supposed to be happening happens. Weather data, depending on the sensor over the sites. If it is a lot of time, I'm sure everybody that's on this panel has, anybody that's in the space community has heard the "it depends" answer response a lot. Well, it does. It depends. I mean, so and that goes back to the operational art that I was speaking about earlier. Is it depends. Every situation is a little bit different, but in the conjunction scenario, obviously you're going to want, like I said, the sensors before and after, so if you got multiple head counts post event, the types of sensors that you have available to you. What else is in danger? Should two objects try to occupy the same space at the same time? Potentially, what DART analysis, object size, object, dispersion type scenarios, potentially a contact for owner operators. I mean, I don't want to step on your toes there, Tony. I know that's a CSPOC mission, but maneuverability windows to avoid conflict, or not conflict, but to avoid conjunction, that type of stuff. So anyway, hopefully that answers.
Anyone else? Nope.
I think I can add to that one there, Brandon, as well. So I think we've mentioned a lot about the objects, their orbits, etc. But something along the lines of the payload, what is the purpose of the satellite? So rather than somebody having to go along and look to the side of what's going on, that nice, easy information of, you can see that satellite, you can see what it's there meant to do. You can see what its mission is. You can see how long it's been there. Building all those things will allow you to see that pattern of life. And as we said, those things that change in space are the things that are strange. So if somebody can see that as well, it provides a massive assistance to the commander.
Great, thank you, Flight Lieutenant. Okay, with that, that concludes the Q&A portion of that. And as we wrap it up, I will hand it back over to Captain Singleton for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Brandon. I thought all the comments from the stakeholders on the video today were fantastic. I thought we had some great questions from people that have tuned in. What I wanted to highlight is that how significant an opportunity this is. If you are a supplier building solutions in the market, you want to know your customer, you want to know what their needs are. And there's a very significant difference between a company who is pitching this tool that they developed and saying, look, it's great, it works, to another supplier who is saying, here's our solution and we've built it because we've heard from people across the U.S. Air Force, Space Force, at Vandenberg, at Colorado Springs, the Flying Dells, and this is what they advocated for. This is what their challenges was. This is what they need. And this webinar is really just an introduction to that. It was just 1 hour. We've heard from several people, but it's giving you some insights from people that are close to those challenges on what those needs are. Moving forward, companies that are interested and have solutions that are relevant to the problem that's been described today, they can submit a proposal through the DASA competition page. Companies with relevant, desirable solutions will be invited to pitch at Pitch Day and have the opportunity to participate in design sprints, where we'll have and provide more one-on-one, intimate, and iterative feedback with these companies. So the goal is that we want to dive more deep. We want to look at those solutions and talk about them and help you understand how they can be the most relevant to the challenges that we have. So that's kind of laying out some of the next steps looking forward. Hopefully this was valuable for everyone. We're excited for the challenges that will be presented on webinars tomorrow, and that more people will tune in for those. But very excited about everyone that was able to tune in, and we will have more people from UK Strategic Command, even the Royal Army and the British Army and the Royal Marines on tomorrow for Challenge 2. And some of our different groups here, as well as more people from the US. So really excited about all the support and all the involvement we've got here. Back to you, Brandon.
Great, thank you, Jake. And I think I accidentally sent it privately instead of to the entire chat, but I want to make sure that everyone is able to see the link to the International Space Pitch Day website within the chat that I just sent. On that website, you'll be able to find more information about the upcoming webinars, how to register for them. I would like to point out that we will do our best to accommodate last-minute registrations for webinars, but it's not guaranteed that you will receive the link if you sign up, 2 minutes before the webinar or even after the webinar has started, but we will certainly do our best. So please go to intlspacepitchday.com. You'll be able to sign up for webinars there. You'll be able to see recorded webinars also on there, and other FAQs that we have. So again, thank you everyone for participating this morning, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar tomorrow morning for challenge number 2 and 3. All right, have a good one, guys.